which exercises are best for building muscle. In this video, I'm going to give you two things. The first is the answer. The second, some examples. Let's do it. In short, the best exercise for building muscle is going to be the exercise that trains the target muscle best. It's that simple. Okay, so good example, if I want to train my biceps, I probably shouldn't use the leg press, right? There might be better options. Okay, so that's basically it. Now, like I said, there are some variables that we definitely need to consider here, and we're going to talk about them in a second. But before I do that, I need to give you guys a major principle of training here that trumps all of this. When it comes to building muscle, the most important thing isn't actually going to be the exercise itself. In fact, selecting the exercise for muscle hypertrophy is probably like one of the easy parts. It's really more so in how you perform the exercise and how hard you train with that exercise. So the primary driver of muscle hypertrophy, the primary thing behind, the reason behind your ability to build muscle is essentially your overall ability to stress the muscle. How hard are you training the muscle? Are you giving the muscle a reason to grow? Are you challenging the muscle? Okay. It's that simple. Now, there are terms that you'll hear in the space or hear in the industry thrown around. Training to failure, mechanical tension, frequency, volume, all of these things, right? All of that is just trying to communicate this idea that we need to train hard. You need to push your body, period. If you're not training hard and giving your muscles a reason to grow, they're not going to grow. It's like anything else in life. If you are not challenged, you'll no longer have a reason to grow. You'll no longer have a stimulus to adapt to because you've already adapted to everything that's been presented to you. It's kind of a beautiful thing, right? So in order for your muscles to grow, no matter what exercise you choose and no matter which muscle group you target, you have to train hard. Usually this means training that muscle group at least twice a week. And I say at least, cautiously because maybe more than twice a week could be dangerous in terms of, overtraining, and maybe less than twice a week could be dangerous in terms of undertraining. You don't want to overtrain. You don't want to hit your muscle groups and train the shit out of them so often that you risk getting hurt, but you also don't want to undertrain. You don't want to hit them so few times that they don't really have a reason to grow. They don't have anything to respond to, really. So you want to find that sweet spot, and most of the literature tells us that it's going to be around twice a week for most people and for most muscle groups. But in short, you need to train yourself as hard as you can, so long as you can recover in between sessions. All right, so you just want to have this nice balance between training really, really hard, recovering really, really well. You maintain that balance, and boom, you're going to see growth. Okay, now, that's the major concept out of the way. Let's talk about some of these variables that can definitely be used to fine-tune our selection. So the very first, and this is just really more so my opinion, but the very first thing you need to think about is something that is easy to progress, easy to load, easy to progressively overload over time. Or not overload, sorry, but progressively load over time. So this can come in the form of compound movements. This can come in the form of isolation movements. This can come in the form of really any exercise, but you just need to pick the ones that are right for you when it comes to progressing them over time. You just don't want to select exercises that are really, really difficult for you to progress with, put simply. The next bit is you need to select exercises that are easy to avoid injury with. So if you have an injury history and you find that any overhead movements just really tweak your shit and it's just not worth it, good, fucking avoid them. Find a different exercise to train your shoulders that don't involve anything overhead. It's that simple. That's all I mean by that point. And then the last thing I'm going to say here is, in my opinion, don't just think about exercises that are going to isolate a particular muscle group just because that's the muscle that you want to train. I think it's very beneficial to consider major compound movements, usually like, your compound barbell movements, squats, benching, barbell rows, those sorts of things. I think those are really, really beneficial for building muscle density and building muscle in general. And people overlook those because they don't directly target a particular muscle group. But I do think there's a lot of benefit to utilizing those compounds, because not only are you, of course, targeting a muscle group that you otherwise would want to target if you're isolating it, but in addition, you're training intermuscular coordination, which is really important. And I think it's just what brings everything together. So don't neglect that, okay? Just because you want to specifically build muscle doesn't mean that you should just write off all of the major compound movements. And by the way, compound movement isn't just barbells. It's anything multi-joint. So, in a perfect world, yes, it's true that anything that completely isolates a specific muscle is probably going to be what's best to train that muscle because it's specifically targeting that muscle. You can put all your energy just into that muscle. Usually you're in a machine, you're in a fixed position, so you can focus, again, all of your energy on it. You don't have to worry about stability. You don't have to worry about anything else. You can just focus on training that one muscle group. However, like I said, I just don't think that's optimal per se. And there are a lot of compound movements that can target particular muscle groups really, really well, where we can also get other benefits out of as well. So for example, one of my favorite leg movements ever is a dumbbell Bulgarian split squat or even a barbell Bulgarian split squat. Very, very grueling exercise. Anybody who's done them knows what I mean. It's a love-hate relationship we have with those, but those are phenomenal for building up your legs. Will they target the quad specifically, the glute specifically, the hamstring specifically? No, but they will hit all of it. And like I said, there's that intermuscular coordination aspect to it that you just can't get in any other way. So I highly recommend including some version of compounds. All right, so that's everything there. Now, the second part to this video is going to be giving you some examples as to what I think are some of the best exercises for building muscle for the major muscle groups. Are you ready for my exercise example reveals? Now, before I do this, I need you to know that I am a competitive powerlifter. I care greatly about looking jacked. I want to look as strong as I am. So I want to be super fucking strong and super fucking jacked. Okay. I truly, truly do. So I train a lot of accessories. Do I train like a bodybuilder? No, absolutely not. However, I do care a lot about it. And the way that I perform a lot of movements and the movements that I select, oftentimes, especially if I don't really need to worry about the context of strength when it comes to those movements, I am thinking about purely muscular hypertrophy and what is going to be best for developing this particular muscle group. So keep that in mind. That is this how maybe C-Bum would do it? I don't know. Is this how Sam Sulek would do it? I don't know. But this is how I would do it. These are some of my favorite exercises, and I'm going to walk through all of them. There's quite a few here. Some of them you probably recognize. Some of them you won't. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see what's on here. But like I said, we're going to walk through all of them, and I may or may not be able to upload some of the exercise videos I've filmed that are in my training app of me performing a lot of these. That way you can see exactly how I perform it. Because like I said before, how you perform an exercise and how hard you train the exercise is the most important thing when it comes to building muscle. Okay, the exercise itself, So here's what we got. I'm going to put it right here for a second so you guys can screenshot that, whatever you want to do. And now we're going to walk through them, okay? So how do I want to do this? Okay, so for legs, you know what? This will make it easier for me. So for legs, we have machine squat, leg extension, leg curl, barbell RDL, hip thrust. Now, these aren't like, oh my gosh, if you had a gun to your head and you can only do one exercise for the rest of your life, what would you do? No. But I'm trying to give you exercises that I think are going to be best for building muscle and that are my go-tos if somebody said to me, hey, you need to give me your favorite exercises, at least right now in this moment, for building muscle. This is what this is going to be. So the machine squat, the reason why I say machine squat, I'm not giving you something specific, is because really almost any machine squat can be utilized effectively. Belt squat, hack squat, pendulum squat, all of them. My favorite machine squat, if it was purely for building muscle, would actually probably be something like a pendulum squat because there's quite a bit you can do with it. Although I don't really ever use a pendulum squat, I usually use a belt squat. Leg extensions, leg curls, this is so obvious. It's so difficult to specifically isolate and target your quads and your hamstrings, and this is just a go-to. So any sort of seated leg extension, maybe prone or seated hamstring curl, something like that's going to be huge and definitely something you want in your arsenal when you're trying to develop those muscle groups. And then the last one here is barbell RDL / hip thrust. You need a hinge movement in there, something where you are able to train a lot more of your posterior chain. I am a big fan of compounds. Like I said, is the barbell RDL ideal for building muscle? Honestly, not necessarily. However, I do think it requires a lot of intermuscular coordination, and I really do think it builds overall density, you know what I mean? Like thick density. And what I will say is the barbell RDL could probably go by back because you're going to build a lot of your erectors with the barbell RDL. But that's why I put the slash here and put like a hip thrust. Yes, there are other movements that you could train, stuff, specifically for your adductors. I would highly recommend single leg press. Actually, is probably what I might put on here instead. Like that's really helpful. Single leg press is honestly great. Maybe we should put that here just so that you guys have it. And the reason why I think that now that I'm thinking about it, it's a great exercise is because it's a fixed position. It's easy to progress. You just kind of, it's easy to add weight to a leg press over time. It's a fixed plane, and for the most part, you can 100% focus on the entire leg the entire time. And depending on how you position your foot, like you get a lot of bang for your buck here. You can focus more on your knee flexion and get more quad. You can focus more on your glute and hamstring stretch, like all of that stuff. You can even get more adductor when you angle your foot out. There's just so much you can do. So yeah, that would be my go-to for that. Now, chest. Chest is tricky because I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of movements that are super fucking overrated. My go-to would be machine chest press and a cross pec press. Machine chest press, this is both flat and incline. You can do a lot with a incline machine chest press. If you were to angle yourself so that the pressing pattern is almost like directly straight out and down almost in relation to your pec, that's basically a flat press, and you're going to train a lot of your mid to lower pec. Now, if you sit normally in an incline press and you adjust yourself so that you are pressing somewhat up here and you're keeping, everything kind of close, and you get the idea, you're going to train your upper chest. And so I think that there's a lot of bang for your buck when it comes to a machine chest press. Do I like dumbbells? Yes. However, they are not as easy to progress with. And take it from somebody who can rep 150s on an incline and a flat bench for at least sets of 6 to 8 reps. It's just not worth the hassle. Getting 150s up on your legs. Most gyms don't even have more than 150-pound dumbbells. So you see what I mean? Like, it's just not as easy to progress, and therefore the machine chest press is always going to be kind of like my go-to option, especially if I'm building muscle and I don't have to worry about some of the strength aspect that I might be thinking about when choosing a dumbbell variation. And then the cross pec press, most of you probably haven't done this, but you can do this on a machine, on a cable. You can't really do this with a dumbbell. Well, you can, I guess, if you lay down, but whatever. Essentially, all you're doing is just coming across the pec here, and you're training a lot of like the pec minor and everything kind of inside. I've just found you get a really nice pump and a nice squeeze with it. So I really like that exercise a lot, and I think it's very underrated. Okay, shoulders. Now, again, some people might be kind of upset because you ain't going to see something on here that a lot of people use. The overhead press. I am not a huge fan of the overhead press. I'm not going to lie to you. I do enjoy doing like dumbbell overhead pressing if I'm seated and stuff. But again, it's very difficult to progress, honestly. Like, I can dumbbell overhead press hundreds, right? But the rate of diminishing returns is terrible. Like, it's not there. The yield just isn't there when you look at the risk for injury versus the reward for shoulder hypertrophy. Like, it's just not totally there. And I'm doing so much other pressing that I just don't think it's really worth it, because any chest pressing I do, I'm going to end up getting front delt involved anyway. Hence why, my front delts are kind of like overdeveloped if you haven't noticed. And that's really what that's going to train anyway when you're going overhead like that. So in my opinion, it has a place, but because it's not as easy to progress, in my opinion, I would prefer a chest-supported incline dumbbell lateral raise. So you set the bench at a slight incline, you're leaning up against it, obviously your chest is facing it, and you're doing dumbbell lateral raises that way. What I really like about this variation is it makes it so that you can't really use a lot of body English with your dumbbell lateral raises. It's a little bit more of a fixed position, so you can focus more on just your ability to do the dumbbell lateral raise, but also engages some trap, which some people may say, well, that's not the point. Like, I want to just isolate my delts. Yeah, but you rarely... How do I put this? You know what? I'm not even going to fucking explain it. Just fucking do it. Just try it, and do it. And then you can tell me if you hate it, because it's a great movement. I absolutely love it. And like I said, I think that you get a lot of bang for your buck, and it's so much easier to progress than like your typical standing dumbbell raise or even like a cable, because you're fixed and your chest is supported and you are engaging your traps a bit. So you have a little bit more help there. I think all around it's a great movement. And again, thinking bang for your buck. Now, the other one, of course, is going to be shrugs. Now, I did include this with the shoulder here because for back, I have quite a few exercises. Couldn't squeeze shrugs into the back. And in my opinion, I would consider, like, especially like the upper trap and all that stuff as part of the shoulders. It's not. I know it's not, but I'm just, for shits and giggles, I'm just saying it. I mean, it kind of, it fits. Okay, so triceps. Triceps is a tricky one. Guys. I know you guys probably can't even see this board, but triceps, man, dude, like, some of you guys are gonna come at me, but dips, insane. Now, I know a lot of people struggle with dips because they get elbow and shoulder pain, but and wrist pain even. But if you can figure it out, I'm telling you, you can get a lot of results from this. Now, if dips are something that you really struggle with finding, a comfortable position, a strong position with, then yes, like a close grip bench press would be totally fine. But dips are phenomenal. Again, good compound movement. When done properly, like you can really load up your triceps quite a bit, and you do get a lot of pec as well, which is really nice. But again, in my opinion, I think dips are awesome. And I will never forget when I was really young, I first started going to the gym. I saw this. It's actually an ex-con, really nice guy though, and he was jacked out of his fucking mind. Just this 6 foot plus bald white dude, tatted up like you can't believe, just fucking shredded and jacked up. Nicest guy in the world, but super jacked. And the first time I saw him, he was doing weighted dips with, it was like 90 pounds or 345s maybe even on a belt. And ever since that day, I was like, yep, I'm going to fucking do those. So that has to be on here. The crossbody tricep extension is the next one. This one I think is a really, really powerful one. It's not as easy to progress. I found that I can really only stay around 20 to 30 pounds tops on a cable. But I found that it's really helpful because it's a position you're not normally in when training the tricep. And I found it does hit the outer head really, really well. And that is something with the triceps that I've always struggled with, is just targeting different heads. And I do think it's just a great exercise overall. Now, my favorite muscle building exercise, if somebody told me like, hey, look, you can only stick to one tricep exercise, period, I'm probably going to go with weighted diamond push-up. A weighted diamond push-up, all you're doing is basically just having like this position on the floor as you press. And this is, dude, man, like this, it fires up your triceps like you cannot believe. There's just, you can progress that really well. And I think it's pretty safe. And yeah, I really like that exercise. There are a lot of tricep exercises that I really, really, really like. Your typical tricep extensions, dumbbell rolling tricep extension. I mean, there's so much, but that's probably what I would do. Now, biceps, incline dumbbell curl and palm facing pull-ups. As you can tell, I'm trying to run the theme of having like maybe one isolation movement here and then one compound movement here, because again, I am a big fan of compound movements. So incline dumbbell curl, there are a lot of phenomenal bicep movements that I really, really like. But the incline dumbbell curl I think is really special because it does force you to almost like isolate the bicep, get a really good stretch in the muscle, which we know promotes lots of hypertrophy. And it's pretty easy to progress. What I will say is sometimes I definitely prefer cables and definitely single arm work when it comes to biceps. I never really do two arms at the same time when it comes to biceps. I like to make sure I can focus on each arm independently because it's easier in terms of the performance of it. Like I notice I can get less reps when I use both arms versus when I just focus on one arm. And I'm here for quality, you know. So yeah, and the palm facing pull up is phenomenal because again, easy to progress. You can start body weight. You can even start modified and then progress it to a weighted belt or something like that. And I think it's great because it's almost like a hammer curl in a way in conjunction with training your back and stuff, and I think that's great. So that would be that. And don't get me wrong, there are some other really phenomenal bicep exercises. Like I love the easy curl bar. I love all of that. But just from what I found, that again, most bang for your buck. And then lastly, back. This is the one where I'm sure a lot of people are going to fucking disagree with me, but just bear with me. The first is going to be a barbell row, of course. I think barbell rows are phenomenal. I think they do tax you quite a bit, but they are phenomenal. I think that they build just an overall width and thickness that you can't get from almost anything else. Any like heavier barbell compound movements I find are going to just build tons of muscular density, and that's phenomenal. So that's what I'm after, you know. I want to be thick. I want to be strong. I want to be like an oak tree, you know what I mean? I want to build muscle, absolutely, but I really do want to be dense, and I found that to be the reason why you get dense. So because your body has no choice but to get dense, right? Because the weight's literally heavier, and it needs to use more of its body to stabilize itself in order for you to perform the movement to begin with, right? And so thus it must get thicker, it must get denser, it must get stronger. So yeah, so barbell row for sure. And there's a lot of ways you can perform a barbell row too. So like you have a lot of options. Single arm lat pull down, really big fan of this one. If I'm going to train the lat and try and like get that sweep, I've always struggled with this, but it's basically just like coming in here. You can get a nice stretch as well. single arm cable lat pull down or machine, and then a chest supported machine row. Really, any of them will do, but I'm a big fan of chest supported rows for training the back. It just really helps you. That stabilization there really helps you protract your scaps, get a really deep stretch in the lat, and then pull through. Also great for training your rear delts, all that stuff. So yeah, guys, these are the major muscle groups, and those are my exercise examples when it comes to the best exercise to build muscle. Now, the last thing I'm going to say here, because I'm sure somebody's going to mention this, is, at least if you've been paying attention, is you may say, well, Gavin, a lot of those don't seem to like specifically isolate and target the target muscle or train the target muscle group super, super well, or as well as some other exercise. Yes, and this is the beautiful point right here. Ready? I told you that one of the most important variables when it comes to muscle hypertrophy is how hard you train them, right? Part of that means enjoying what you're doing and believing in what you're doing. If you don't really enjoy it, if you don't really buy into it, you're probably not going to work that hard at it. And so I chose exercises that I feel like really work for me, right? And I really enjoy doing them. Yes, it's true that there is an optimal choice or a most optimal choice. But you also have to understand that in order for you to make progress, you need to be consistent. And part of consistency means buying into and enjoying what it is you're doing, finding love in the process, or love for the process, rather. And so if you're choosing exercises that absolutely suck, you absolutely hate, are absolutely brutal, and you just never enjoy doing them, they're a bitch to set up, whatever, yeah, you're probably not going to do them too often. You're probably not going to progress them well, and you're probably not going to push them as hard as you would if there was a different exercise that you actually enjoyed, right? And so that's something that you really absolutely should be keeping in mind, is just your general enjoyment, okay? So that's everything I have for you today. Again, hopefully this gives you a better idea as to which exercises are best for building muscle. And again, in my opinion, the best exercise for building muscle is the exercise that trains the target muscle best. I'll see you guys in the next YouTube video.